Hello everyone, I hope your week went well. Mine was once again pretty mediocre and generally sucky, but there it is. Now the weekend's arrived once again and I can get started on my next project. That's right, I'm back to regular car videos starting this weekend. My weekend in the life vlog was so popular that I'm just abandoning that sort of thing for the foreseeable future. So, what am I working on today? I'm going to be painting my barely visible valve cover with some high-temp wrinkle red paint. Also, I've got my heinously sunken OEM alloy wheels fitted because of that little guy. I picked up that hitchhiker on the drive home from work yesterday and I didn't want to deal with it, so I just threw the OEM wheels on. Let's get started on the valve cover, shall we? So to start, I've got to remove the whole intake and the ECU. I've covered that in a previous video. It's just a few 10mm bolts and, some fittings to undo. Nothing major. I'm just going to get that out of the way and not film it. Okay, so this was a little bit more in-depth than the last time I did it, so I'll do a quick Cliff Notes version of it. You do your typical remove the intake. There's 3 10mm bolts that hold it to the top of the engine. What I did this time is I actually unplugged the ECU and the airflow sensor so that I could get the whole thing conveniently out of the way and easily be able to come in and out with the valve cover. Now, as far as stuff that's actually attached to the valve cover, the harness for the injectors attaches here and here with these little plastic clips. You can just undo those with some needle nose pliers. Same here, there's a wire here. You undo the clip. The wire goes to this sensor down here. You can't really see, it's dark, but this sensor that goes down there. There's a sensor here in the top of the valve cover held in with a 10mm bolt. That sensor is here, out of the way. And of course the coils for the spark plugs, all held down with 10mm bolts. They're back there. Now I can undo all of the bolts, remove the valve cover, and hit it with the degreaser to ready it for paint. Anybody want to guess the size of the bolts that hold the valve cover down? That's right, 10mm. Magnetic bowls for the win. There we are, got it off, no problem. Just set it on a dirty rag to keep the oil from going everywhere. Quick note, when you're removing your valve cover, do it very carefully. You don't want any kind of metal-on-metal contact with anything in here, especially the lobes of the camshafts. Now I can hit it with some purple power. We'll just get a good coating on there, especially around the fill cap, because there's all kinds of runoff there. Now we'll give it a couple of minutes to work its magic. Another thing to note is to not damage your valve cover gasket when pulling the cover off. Since my car only has 17,000 miles on it, I'm going to be reusing this gasket. Just bear in mind that it may fall off of the cover and get caught on something. Mine almost did, but luckily it's intact. After what seems like hours, and probably was, I've got the valve cover all cleaned and wiped down, and I've taped up all the holes where I don't want paint to go in. Now we can start painting. And I've made sure to roll the car back, just in case there's any overspray. That was loud. Alright, here goes nothing. Alright, so I can focus on this. I'm going to cut to the first coat done now. The first coat is down. I read that you're supposed to let the first coat tack for about 10 minutes before hitting it with a second coat and then heat to make it wrinkle. Let's slap on coat number 2. Now we can bring the heat. Here are my results. It's wrinkling up pretty well. Anyone who's using this as an instructional video, it seems like in areas where it will pool or get heavy, if you spray it on heavy, it'll crack a little too much or, look like zombie movie flesh, but it's not too bad. Most of this is going to be covered up by the air intake, so I really only did this for a little splash of color in the engine bay. This actually came out pretty good. Once it sat for a while and was able to fully wrinkle, everything came out very satisfactory. I'm just going to give it a little bit more time to dry, well, at least dry to the touch, then I can reinstall it on the engine. Quick note for anyone doing this on a Mazda2, I was informed that there would be a couple of places that would be very obvious where I would have to reapply RTV. One spot is there, the other is right there. Basically on either side of the timing chain underneath the valve cover. So bear that in mind. Before reinstalling the valve cover, be sure to reaffix the valve cover gasket underneath. It's pretty self-explanatory. But also, don't forget those 2 dabs of RTV that I told you about earlier. Because this is a delicate process, I'm just going to cut to it back on top of the engine. We're in the home stretch. Now, when you're reinstalling it, be careful. Unless you have time to let it sit, then you're fine, but I didn't. I was able to get it back on here without hitting any of this stuff and messing up the paint. So, as far as the valve cover bolts, I'm going to tell you now, I don't know the torque specs and I didn't use a torque wrench. However, I've done many valve covers in the past, new gaskets or painting or what have you, and I can tell you that snug is fine. I've done it just until each bolt is snug, and it's worked fine. You want to do it just like you would a wheel. One at this end, one at the far end, one in the middle. You want to spread the load out as you're tightening down those bolts. Even with the coils, that sensor, everything, snug is fine. If you over-tighten a bolt and stretch the hole or break the bolt off, because it's easy to do that, if you break off a bolt in your cylinder head, I'm not going to be responsible. Snug is okay. But if you're a stickler, I'll try and find those torque specs from someone else who knows. All done and installed, everything's buttoned up, and I said it before when I started the video, it's not going to be very apparent, but it adds a nice, sophisticated splash of color to the engine bay. That's a lot better than bare cast metal. I'm happy with the result. Alright everybody, that's pretty much it. Leave me a comment below. I want to know what people think of the Wrinkle red valve cover. And if you're considering painting your own valve cover, whether or not you own a Mazda2, I hope this video points you in the right direction. I've got to call it quits. It's been a really long, hot Florida afternoon, and I'm beat. So I'm going to go grab a shower, some dinner, probably go to sleep. Thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll see you guys next time.
Is what we do. Applies to classic regular price sandwiches without upgrades additional.